Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this third episode of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. I'm happy you found our show, and I'm very appreciative of the support and encouragement I've been receiving about the content and the direction we're headed. So please keep reaching out, commenting, and sharing with others who may benefit as well. So far, we've talked about being prepared for seasons, like the season of divorce that is statistically January through March. And we've talked about surviving betrayal, which often prompts a partner or spouse to seek a legal split. If you've been betrayed by anyone in your life, do listen to that second episode for some survival tips for the initial stages of your pain. Just know that betrayal is one of the most painful emotional experiences because it turns our world upside down and everything we thought we knew to be true is now in question. And the key is to not self-betray, but to honor your pain while not acting out on it. So take some time to float where you catch your breath and find your heartbeat, as I say, and I hope that makes sense. All right, so let's continue the conversation this week. And other than divorce season, we also know that the first few months of any new year is when we tend to make resolutions and commit to habit changes, right? And some of us go so far as to clean out our closets. We want to bring order to chaos, don't we? And there were some really interesting reports of a parallel post-pandemic closet purge and divorce surge. So people were literally cleaning out their lives. And I'm curious how many of you have been purging your closets, out with the old, in with the new, or maybe to simply clear out the clutter and create some open space. I think I've donated maybe, 6 or 7 bags of clothing and shoes so far, and I'm not done yet. And I was putting on some of those high heels and admiring their beauty and tried to recall a fond memory of having worn them. And then I chose to honor the stage of life I'm in now, protect my vulnerable knees and my flat fitness shoe-loving feet, and I put the high heels in the giveaway bag. And I started thinking, what will I tackle next? And I decided it's going to be that makeup drawer. It is such a mess. I have so much stuff in it, and I tend to use just the same things over and over. So why am I keeping that just in case color? I don't know. Anyway, are you guys familiar with Marie Kondo? She had a television show for a while and a New York Times bestselling book that got her the show, titled The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And in it, she tells us to ask if something sparks joy, to help us make our decision to keep it or give it away or throw it away. So Kondo says that if you properly simplify and organize your home once, you'll never have to do it again. And doesn't that sound nice? Has anybody actually ever done that? Let me know. I'd like to know if it works. She says that if we do it in categories rather than by going room to room, that's the key to success. She says that that's how we make lasting change. And she says we all tend to kind of rebound back into a mess again after tidying. But if we follow her method once, we'll never have to declutter again. Now, that got me started thinking in terms of relationships. Have you ever purged your relationships? And if so, by what standards? Do they spark joy? Have you ever rebounded back into a similar relationship pattern with new people or with the same people back in your life? So if we think in categories, as Kondo would suggest we do, there are relationship categories in our lives, right? So let's think, what would our relationship categories be? Maybe you can make a list on your phone or a notepad, or mentally as we go. Family comes to mind first for me. And can you really purge family? We'll talk about that. Uh, but family could be broken down into even subcategories, if you will. Your spouse, if you're married, children, parents, siblings, cousins, and as far out on that family tree, maybe as you want to trace those branches. Another category that would come to mind in relationships would certainly be friends. And I imagine you could even break those down into maybe your closest inner circle, a bigger group, or the friends per the social media definition, and maybe keep going from there. Another category might be colleagues or workmates. Basically, I believe we're in a relationship with everyone and everything. So, whatever categories you want to come up with, and if you agree, just list as you come up with those thoughts. And think about what you may need to change in those areas. I have no doubt that we're going to reference different, relationship categories in future episodes and how they impact our healing journeys. But today's focus will be on interpersonal relationships. But let's go ahead and see what other relationships may come to mind other than those personal ones. And the first one that comes to my mind, maybe because I haven't had lunch yet, is food. I mean, what is my relationship with those Girl Scout Thin Mint cookies? It's like a secret affair once a year that I crave. I long for it. I mean, I dream about it. I covet it. I cannot wait for the annual hookup. I think some of you have that same craving and affair. And it's cookie season, by the way, through February 25th. So get out there and support your local Girl Scout troops. But do you have a secret affair with food? What about your relationship with money? Money is known as currency, which is intended to be an exchange of energy to flow in and out. How's your flow? Do you hold it tight? Or do you burn through it? What about time? How do you spend it? Is time money, as some people would say? And what is your relationship, let's say, with fun? Do you allow it? Do you limit it? Is everything fun? And what's your relationship, let's say, with fitness and exercise? Do you avoid it? Are you addicted to it? I actually know people who go walk like 6 miles before they actually come to the gym for their group class. Amazing, huh? Do you have a healthy or unhealthy relationship with aging? Is it something that your perspective, your attitude is gracefully accepting or perhaps surgically defying? There's a relationship with everything. What about your relationship with God or the universe, with spirituality or religion? And how do these relationships affect all others? Do they somehow limit you or perhaps lift you? Anyway, I think you get the picture. We're in relationship with everything and everyone, if you can accept my definition in that way, including with ourselves. Would you agree? So, considering that, do you know who you are and what you stand for? I asked this question last night of my support group. No one was able to answer in the moment. And how would you answer this seemingly simple question? Who are you? I remember asking this question to participants at an industry expo in Las Vegas where I was speaking on the topic of corporate culture, reputation, and values. And I actually pose this question to most every group I work with, regardless of whether it's business or life related, because isn't everything life related? And why do I ask this question? Because I believe it's one of the most difficult questions for someone to answer on the spot, yet the most important question of anyone's life. And I would say that consistently, whether it's support group or industry expo, I find that people answer with what they do and not with who they are. They rattle off their stats, so to speak, a list of the roles they play in life, what I call the name, rank, and serial number. So let's give an example of what I mean by that. I might have answered, my name is Ann Papayotti. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I currently reside in Grapevine, Texas, where I own a private coaching practice. I recently became an empty nester. I have 3 young adult sons, a dog, a cat, and as some would say, a Greek god for a husband. You're welcome, honey. And I enjoy reading, writing, traveling, and loaded lattes. Okay, great. I shared some details about my life. But who am I? And to truly, truly answer that question, to answer who I am, I need to communicate what my values are, how I show up in the world because of them. So if we were to try that again, and I were to ask myself, who am I? And insert my values into my answer, maybe you'd learn a little something different, more meaningful about me as a person. So I'm going to try to share my personal mission statement, if you will, because I try to get people to put them into action statements. So listen and see if you hear values words as I say this. It's kind of like a corporation or a company that has their mission statement on the wall, and it's like trying to show how they serve their customers, what their purpose is beyond making a profit. So my personal mission would go something like this. I'm a seeker of truth, and I find it through ongoing education, spiritual growth, and creative expression. I strive to live with integrity in my words, deeds, and actions. The lines on my face are authentic and remind me of my ability to persevere through adversity. I see the world as my family, and I believe in showing love and compassion to all. So did you hear them? I shared 10 values that are important to me. Okay, now maybe there's more. There certainly are more, but each of those is actually supported or defined by other values words, if you will. There's more. So, for example, what I mean by that, if you take the word integrity that I used, as I said, I strive to live with integrity, right, in my words and deeds and actions, then I think of integrity. I don't have integrity unless I show up on time, that I behave in a respectable manner, that I'm dependable in whatever I'm doing, personally and professionally, that I'm honest and I'm kind and I'm considerate, I'm fair. That all represents integrity. So it's taking a word that represents, a bigger pile of words, if you will, to create and define who you are. So could you define who you are in a similar way by taking value words that represent what's most important to you and then put them into actionable statements that represent who you are as your best self? And we all have days when we're not our best self, right? But this becomes our guiding principles, just like those corporations that keep those on their walls. So I think about when my now 28-year-old son was a going out on the town teenager when we were living in Montreal, and the legal drinking age is 18 there. But I would always say to him as he was leaving the house, remember who you are and what you stand for. To which he would respond at the time with a dramatic eye roll and the occasional whatever. But you know what? He knew what I meant. He knew that I meant be confident in what you believe in and represent yourself beyond the walls of this house so that you're not influenced otherwise, so that you lead rather than you are led, so that you can respect yourself tomorrow, so that you're happy, fulfilled, void of conflict and guilt and shame. Because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I believe Katy Perry sings that in a song, but I think it was Shakespeare that may have said that first, but I'll have to fact check that somehow. But regardless of what your guiding principles are, being able to articulate them is having that confident self or sense of self that will carry you through daily decisions and critical moments. And that's what will give you peace when you need to say no, and confidence We need to say yes. And that's the important stuff when it comes to all the relationships outside of yourself, right? So who are you? You can go to my website, skyviewcoaching.com. And if you wouldn't mind putting that up for it, thank you, Dan. And under the blog tab, you'll find a post about this topic along with a downloadable PDF of values words to help you create your own who you are personal mission statement. All right, it's time for a break. And when we return, we'll talk about knowing what you want when it's time to purge those relationships. So don't go far. We'll be back in a heartbeat with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. I'm Ann Papayotti. Just before the break, we were talking about knowing who you are, because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And Dan, who's with me in the engineering room today, and I were talking about, where did this first originate? Because I said, I know Katy Perry has it in a song, and I believes Shakespeare was known to possibly first written it, but I'd have to fact check that. So Dan was helping me fact check it. He said, I think Public Enemy has it in some of their lyrics. I'm not sure. But in his quick Google search, it's been attributed to Alexander Hamilton and Malcolm X. So there you go. But it's wise words that my other son said he's going to have in a tattoo one day. So I don't know. It landed on ears somewhere in the younger one, at least. All right. So with clarity on who you are, and with some ideas to really get even more clarity on that. And again, you can go to my website and download that PDF of values words to help you create your own personal mission statement. It's important to now know what you want. And for today's discussion, specifically what you want in your interpersonal relationships. Your relationships should complement your life. They should align with your personal mission statement. They should be supportive of your values and therefore supportive of you living your best life. So going back to Marie Kondo, she says that before you start decluttering your home, visualize your destination. So before purging your relationships, let's visualize the end result. So what's your vision? What kind of relationships do you want to have? Are the ones you've always known actually good for you? Are they in alignment with your beliefs, desires, dreams, visions for your personal growth and development? Let's simplify that. It's not just about maybe what you want, but why. And that may not sound more simple, but it is. Let me put it this way. How do you want to feel when you achieve the vision? It's going to be the why. So how do you want to feel in your relationships? Let's just kind of leapfrog to that. So as Marie Kondo would say, it's about choosing what you want to keep because of how it makes you feel, rather than focusing on what you want to discard. So when you know yourself, you know what is right for you and what is not. What and who. So let's call it maybe a natural acquisition and a natural shedding, if you will, because the relationships that you choose to keep will fit with one or more of your values in some way. And the ones you do not keep will not fit. In fact, they may be even harmful to your values. So for purposes of our conversation today, again, we're focusing on interpersonal relationships, deciding which ones spark joy, if you will, in your life and which ones do not, with our own criteria. Though I'm sure you can apply most of what is shared today to any of those subcategories we came up with in the first segment. So let's head into that proverbial closet and let the purge begin. Now, I've told y'all before that I like to use metaphors because it's always more effective to show than to tell. So now, imagine choosing one relationship to focus on, as if you would an article of clothing from your closet, and examine it closely. And if you're focusing on decluttering your life, de-stressing and ridding chaos and aligning with your values and living your best life, which relationship first just comes to mind? I have 7 questions I want you to ask. Does it fit? Is it comfortable? Does it compliment or flatter me? Has it served its purpose? Would I buy it again? Does it need any repairs or alterations? And do I love it? So let's take a closer look at those 7 questions. When I say does it fit today? I mean, maybe this relationship fit a few years ago, like before 16 boxes of Thin Mint cookies, if you know what I mean. But perhaps one of you has outgrown the other and you simply no longer fit in one another's worlds. You get it. Number 2, is it comfortable? Meaning, is this relationship easy and fun, or is it restrictive and bothersome in some way? Maybe you just don't get one another's humor or music, or perhaps your politics clash. And moving on to number 3, does it compliment or flatter me? Meaning, relationships that are part of your best life make you feel good about yourself. They're immersed in a general healthy life balance. Or so maybe you say, maybe it's just not a good style for me at this stage in my life. I don't know about some of you, but I have been guilty of buying inexpensive, often ill-fitting clothing in a quest to look and feel stylish, and the tags are still hanging on them. They're just not me. I can imagine some of you are just nodding your heads right now. It's the same in relationships, often in friendships. We just hang out with people because we want to fit in somewhere that we just don't. And the 4th one, maybe you have to ask yourself, has it served its purpose? Some people come into our lives, I'm sure you've heard this before, for a season or a reason, and others for a lifetime. So discerning which is which is sometimes the lesson that we have to learn. And so ask yourself, is the time up on this one? And if so, it's about letting go. And I'd say with gratitude. The other question, number 5, is, would I buy it again? Now, there should be no hesitation when thinking about your relationship. It's a yes or a no. And as a lot of people who've worked with me know, that I like to say, if it isn't an instant hell yes, it is a no. Okay? When it comes to people. All right, number 6, does it need any repairs or alterations? And by this I mean, is it a quality relationship? I'm thinking of clothing that's like been in the back corner. It just needs some attention, needs to be shown some love. That friend you cherish but you haven't spoken to in a while, maybe it's just time to dust it off, stitch up the lost time, if you will. Or someone you care about who maybe there's been a rift and you value the relationship and you're willing to take whatever the next steps are to move forward and to repair it. So you deem it worth the investment. Number 7, do I love it? Now, do I love it? But what if it's in bad shape? Such bad shape that it's irreparable. All right. Are you holding on to a bad relationship because you love someone, but not how they make you feel? So if you still love it, do your answers to any of the previous questions really matter? This becomes really the toughest one, right? And I hear this in a lot of private sessions. I can't stay in this relationship, but I can't leave either. I still love him or I still love her. And whatever has happened that has them thinking of letting go, getting unstuck involves really reconsidering the past events from a different, more empathetic perspective. And then moving forward may mean really a restructuring of the relationship, often so that they are less giving and more realistic. It may mean going back to the step before. Number 6, does it need any repairs or alterations, right? Getting unstuck may require it. Well, it definitely is going to require being truthful with yourself about how you feel. If you're still angry or sad or anxious, even though you wish you weren't, but you're holding out the possibility that someday you might feel better, it's going to require action on your part. And I'm going to recommend that you seek a third party to help you with that, counseling or coaching for the relationship, not just you, the two of you in this case. Okay. Now, look, we can make light of it all we want, but the brutal truth is that for most of us, it's much harder to let go of people than clothing, even if they're bad for us. And why is it so difficult? What would be your first thought? I mean, if they're family, sure, we can't fully let them go, though I do have clients in estranged relationships with family members, which is very hurtful. It's a hurtful dynamic, and they may have physically let go, but never mentally. We can put boundaries with family, which is a healthier option than ghosting and threatening or shaming them, which is a toxic dynamic that I've also seen. But attempting to communicate, no matter how respectful in nature, can be difficult with people who've already made their mind up toward the other party. Now, some social relationships may naturally fade with natural barriers like time and distance, and others will remain solid no matter the time and distance due to the solid foundations. And I imagine that some of you listening today may be like me and have had to start over socially due to relocating. And I'm someone who changed schools a lot as a child and had to be the new girl over and over. I got really good at making new friendships, and that's transferred into adulthood where, again, I've moved several times, even between countries. And I've had to start over socially. I've had to start over professionally. My friendship closet got purged regularly, but I always kept a few classic pieces from each location, and I've been blessed that they've kept me as well. Now, I know some of you struggle desperately with fear around social change, and I get it. Fear is why we hold on to relationships that are not supporting our best life. And that goes back to what is called attachment issues, which are anchored in fear. And I found this interesting. Did you know that fear of ending up alone is considered to be one of the most common fears in our society? So much so that it's been given a name, monophobia. You may also hear it called autophobia, and the terms may be used interchangeably for describing the fear of ending up without a romantic partner, and also for the greater anxiety of just being alone in general. But the definition is much more complex, of course, than we're going to go into. But ask yourself, am I afraid to let people go who just aren't good for me because I'm afraid of being alone. Is that why? I don't know. Let's first talk about friends, and then we'll come back and talk about lovers or those romantic relationships. When I teach my healthy relationships course, I have the participants do what I call a friendship audit. And I first ask them to make a list of their friends and to remember why they became friends in the first place. Like, think about what and who brought you together. And then what and who's keeping you connected? Why are you still friends? And then put them in columns of that reason, season, or lifetime. And then new sheet of paper. What kind of friends do you want to have? What qualities, values, interests would someone new in your life possess? And a good way to think about that is, what are you not maybe getting out and doing right now because you don't have a friend to do it with? Think about that. And then what kind of friend do you want to be? Then take these 2 sheets of paper and compare them. Compare the current friendships that you have to the kinds that you want to have and the kind of friend you want to be in return. Okay? And then looking at the friends you have, determine which of those have strong enough history and deserve to be worked on, and which ones need to be let go. And if they deserve to be worked on, how can you show up as the kind of friend you just said you want to be? All right. So things you can think about is the emotional time and effort you're both putting into the friendship. What are you both getting out of it? When you think about each friend, how do you feel about the prospect of spending time with them? Are you excited? Are you indifferent? Do you dread it? And who makes the most effort in the friendship? Is it 50-50, one-sided? Do one of you cancel plans for better offers? Or one of you a serial canceler? You know what I mean by that? Or you or they flaky with everybody? Do they build you up or criticize and bring you down? Do you feel appreciated? Do you appreciate them? Who leads the conversation? Do you feel that you can't get a word in sideways for them talking about themselves, or do you share the conversation more evenly? The friendship feels one-sided in either direction. It's not really serving either of you to its full potential. Now, always encourage speaking up and giving someone an opportunity to understand when something's out of balance. And we need to ask for what we need in a relationship before we determine that someone cannot meet our needs. Think about that. It's time for a short break. And when we come back, we'll continue our discussion about friends, and then we'll move into lovers. So don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking about basically a friendship audit. So just to finish up my thoughts on that, auditing your friends doesn't need to be melodramatic. So there's no need to start a fight or ignore them at the gym. Instead, it's really about freeing up your time and energy to invest in those really significant, meaningful friendships that actually do enrich your life. And, sometimes there are those lifetime friendships where you just kind of need to bang your heads together once in a while if you start to take each other for granted. But if you've simply lost the inclination to spend time together, sometimes it's better to gradually let go and walk away than to cling on. So trust yourself on that. All right, moving on. Maybe the one that people are more interested in, though. I have had clients tell me they would rather be in a toxic relationship than be alone. And that tells me they've had thoughts rooted in fear and feelings of low self-worth, and their actions, behaviors, and choices become self-sabotaging. So this is like saying they would rather keep in their wardrobe a hot, scratchy wool that they happen to have an allergy to, turtleneck sweater that gives them a rash, than give it up, take a chance going without a sweater, without a rash, and eventually trying on a new one, maybe a soft cotton or cashmere V-neck that's both soft, or more than both, soft, comfortable, and warm. That sounds unreasonable to me, does it you? Well, we're talking about human emotion. I published an article on Your Tango sometime last year titled 7 Reasons People Would Rather Be in an Unhealthy Relationship Than Be Alone. And the article went into a deeper explanation behind why people stay in unhealthy situations when they deserve more. And in summary, the 7 reasons are these, and I'll have to look at my little trusty post-it notes here, but the first one is the fear of loneliness. And most unhealthy relationships, I'm just going to tell you, are lonely. So don't kid yourself. I get it, but let's not stay in an unhealthy relationship because you're worried about being lonely. You already are. The second one is the fear of being alone forever. Now, what I'm going to say about that is there are billions of people on the planet, and you actually settled in this relationship because it's unhealthy. So I imagine you can find another one to settle for. So take the risk and leave the unhealthy one. Take the risk to find a healthy one. Okay. The third one, fear of change. I get it. This is a huge fear. People are scared of change. They'd rather keep the scratchy wool sweater, right? Even though we're telling them there's a nice cotton or cashmere one over here, they'd rather stick with what they know. It's like the devil you know is better than the one you don't. Uncertainty is difficult. I get that. But you have to make room. You can't hold on to something and make room for something new. So that is that. If fear of change is your fear, you know what to work on. All right. That's your healing point. The next one, fear of loss. And I get that too. I've had a lot of loss in my life. Perhaps you have as well. And you feel like you can't handle anymore. You can't lose anyone else, no matter how bad it is. And you love them. And you think this is what love is, don't you? In this unhealthy relationship. It's what you say to yourself. That's what we say to ourselves in unhealthy relationships. So again, hear your pain point. You know what you need to work on healing. Fear of independence. That means you think you cannot make it on your own, even though maybe you want out. But why do you believe that? And it's usually because the partner in an unhealthy relationship, has told you so. And maybe there's some truth there. Maybe there's a financial limitation or something. But what keeps you, what stops you from taking the responsibility and figuring it out, that's really what you need to work on, which is probably confidence. Fear of failure. Okay, fear of failure. So ask yourself, what led you to believe that you're the one failing in this relationship? I guarantee you're intelligent, capable, and educated enough and should be able to manage influence and make this what it should be, right? Well, there's the problem, because you think you can fix it. You can't fix other people. But so many smart, educated, capable people in every other aspect of their life really, really, really stay because they think they should be able to fix a relationship. All right. The one you need to fix is a relationship with yourself. Work on that. Move on. Something to ponder, right? Fear of rejection or abandonment. This one's huge. And this does say something very specific about you and me. This says that what you really fear is being unworthy of love, or that you may be unlovable. Okay, this could be the source behind all other fears. And this is about attachment style that I mentioned earlier. And attachment styles are developed in childhood. But don't start blaming mom and dad just yet. You may have had a great childhood, but experienced a betrayal by a friend, infidelity by a spouse or partner, the death of someone significant in your life, or some other emotionally devastating event that created how you now attach to relationships. And what's important is to understand why you attach and hold on to relationships in adulthood, even unhealthy ones, regardless of when it started. So, um, as you can imagine, there are these different styles, but a secure style leads to a healthy bonding in adulthood in all types of relationships, including those with family and friends and romantic partners. And insecure styles do the opposite, and they can appear, let's call it, overly clingy or controlling, avoiding conflict, maybe to your detriment, partner pleasing. And these insecurities can leave you feeling anxious and emotional and crush your self-esteem. There are other insecure styles that fear getting too close or fear getting hurt, and they drive toxic behaviors that unduly stress relationships. Do you recognize yourself in any of this? And if you do, regardless of when your insecurity developed, it's important to become aware, to stop seeking validation from others and depending on them to make you feel good about yourself and worthy of love. I hope that makes sense. So seeking that validation is what puts you in a position to enable unhealthy and unacceptable behaviors of partners and yourself. And that's when you're going against yourself, against your own values. And that's when you're never going to be living your best life. That's when stress and illness and all these things show up. You'll continue to invest your time, your energy, your finances, and find a reason to stay because you'll always see it as acceptable. You'll find yourself possibly as having a conflict of values. For example, not wanting to be the one to break up a family because you were from a broken family. So you hold on tight to spare your kids the emotional pain of a broken home rather than show them a whole and healed you. Let me say this, just because you said I do does not mean you must. The best you is the best thing for your children. Could it be that you don't believe you deserve better? If so, why? That's a really deep wound. And we'll dedicate some time to examining and healing that kind of a wound in future episodes. But let's first talk about the nature of our belief systems. And we'll do that next month when my co-author of The Gift of Shift, Tracy McDonald, joins me for an empowering conversation. And she'll do that, I believe it's going to be, let me find my note about, yes, Tuesday, March 19th. And I hope you'll plan to join us then for that conversation. There's so much that I want to share with you and get you thinking about your relationships, but you first really have to examine the relationship with yourself. And you have to look inside and see, what is it about you that keeps you holding on and not letting go, especially of what I call those scratchy wool relationships. All right, we're going to take another break. And when we come back, I'll share my closing thoughts for today. So don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
All right, welcome back. So in this closing segment, I just want to say I really hope I've gotten you thinking about your relationship closets and about giving your wardrobe a bit of a makeover. It's an opportunity to simplify and reset your life. Appreciate what you keep and recognize if you're keeping someone due to an attachment to the past or an anxiety about the future, so you can start healing what must be healed. The alteration process, if you will. And I hope I've inspired you to get reacquainted with yourself, with who you are, so that you can be comfortable in your relationships. Have a stress-free style, if you will, so that you know what you want and what you can do without, that you can trust yourself and follow your intuition, and all will be well. I hope you're inspired to recognize the most important relationships in your life and attend to them and show them some love and repair those that are torn. It's hard to recognize if you have different values than perhaps even your family members. But different doesn't have to be difficult, but it does have to be defined. But with commitment and respectful communication and what I call healthy compromise, many important relationships can be reconstructed. In talking about friends today, I've realized that recently I've had more and more clients share that they are having struggles in their friend relationships. And what I'm hearing is that they're often finding themselves in relationships with controlling or with a controlling, dominating friend. And it keeps them up at night because it feels like a conflict of values to be compassionate and to speak up and say that something's not okay. So what we work on is using their value for themselves, such as self-compassion, and then having the perspective that it would be unjust and unkind to allow this person to think all is well when it's not. And to have my client believe that it's their responsibility to communicate and give their friend the opportunity to understand. The opportunity to understand doesn't mean they will. And then depending on how their friend changes their behavior or does not, then the client will make their decision from that space. Speaking of friends, I'm really excited. I mentioned that my co-author, Tracy McDonald, is joining me. Our book, The Gift of Shift. Dan, would you mind putting that on screen? It's a collection of 12 short personal stories that show us coming from a mindset of where we felt helpless and hopeless and defeated maybe in a particular circumstance in life. And then we were able to shift our perspective without changing our circumstance to become more empowered. And it's a great way, again, to show rather than tell. And then we provide the reader 5 questions so that they can reflect on how that theme is played out in their life. And I shared before that betrayal was one of those themes as last week. Well, Tracy and I are going to talk about our beliefs when she joins me. And the first chapter in our book is about synchronicity and whether you believe in synchronicity or coincidence. And we start with that chapter because you've got to understand the power of your belief system. And that was threaded throughout today's conversation, is what you believe and why you believe it. And it really is going to show up with everything in your life. So we start the book with that chapter, which is one of Tracy's. And I love that. And we're going to continue that discussion. I hope you'll join us for that. But my very first guest on the show is going to be another friend of mine, and she'll be with me on February 20th. Her name is Monica Housewright, and I cannot wait to share the story of our friendship with you because she's one of the first friends I made here in Grapevine after relocating and starting over. And it was one of those coincidences that Tracy and I will be talking about that I believe was actually a synchronicity that was meant to happen. So those two things will tie in quite well. And Monica and I will be talking about a very difficult subject, dealing with diagnosis. So I hope you'll join us with that. If you've ever had to deal with that for yourself or someone in your family, I think you will benefit from that discussion. And then another friend who will show up sometime between those two conversations, we have not pinned down a date yet, is Kara Cornett Finger, who is one of those classic pieces in my closet that is timeless, that we don't have to see each other often and we can pick up where we left off. And I'm sure, and I do, or absolutely hope that you have that type of friend. She's an amazing woman, and she's somebody that it's one of those that I didn't think would fit. And I tried her on for size, and we've been friends for nearly 40 years. So that says a lot about friendship, right? But she has an amazing nonprofit organization called My Bag, My Story, and it supports children in foster care. And if you're aware about foster children and how that works, but a lot of them go from family to family or even leave the foster care system with just a black garbage bag to carry their possessions in. So she has started this amazing nonprofit organization that provides them with amazing luggage and backpacks, and it's colorful and it's beautiful. And it's something to call their own, to carry the few possessions they have in life. And it's got a lot more going on than just that. And I look forward to introducing you to her and to her organization. All right. And it's hard to let people go, isn't it? But time may be up for whatever reason. Hold the reason accountable to your values and vision. And as always, if you are in an abusive relationship, there's no excuse for abuse. The domestic violence hotline, Dan, if you would, thank you for that. Information is there on the screen. Lots of resources. human beings to speak to, lots of resources to guide you in the direction. And remember, we don't all have a black eye from domestic violence. I didn't, but we definitely had battered souls. So reach out and get the support you need. And I want to thank Dan for being behind the scenes today, for keeping me on track and the show on the air. And thank you to you, our audience, for listening. We hope you'll join us again next week. So as we conclude this episode of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud, remember that healing is not a linear journey. It's a process of profound transformation. And if today's stories resonated with you, please share this podcast with those who might need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. And you can connect with me on social media. On Facebook, it's going to be at Skyview Coaching or at Ann Papayodi, and Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. And let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. And until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. Again, thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayodi. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.